Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. We continue on with our derivation, ultimately looking for the stabilizing syllability of what is sensorality. But as we always make a lot of progress, we've been discussing inversion versus opposition. Again, that's just the natural, logical concepts, the two concepts that presented themselves. What is the difference between opposition and inversion? And so we've been talking a lot about that. We've derived and proven that energy is the inverse of entropy, that infinitesimality is the inverse of infinity, and that viscosity is the inverse of velocity. Right? Two sides of the same coin. Energy, the capacity to do work; entropy, disordered energy in a fashion that cannot be used to do work. Velocity, the ability to move; viscosity, the resistance to movement. Specifically flow, but flow is movement. Infinity, this one's a little, again, infinitesimality, really, again, the infinity is well defined conceptually, right? It's the awareness of the unobservable universe. There are things out there that we cannot interact with. And so the things that we can interact with are bounded. And so infinity is well defined conceptually. It's infinity, knowing infinity is limited by the speed of light, the fastest anything that can be transmitted to us. And then conversely, the inverse of that, the speed of light, is infinitesimality, the slowest anything can move. Then when you have an integral and you have a little integrand sign and you have a dx, and we've provided and proven the physical bounds of what that dx could represent. And so the point being, logically, is we have inversion, and the way this derivation has progressed, it came with opposition. Again, what's the difference? But anytime, again, we're trying to find the right question to ask. We are literally deriving the question, what is the theme of mathematics? And the answer is, the base of mathematics is thematics. Right? It's a self-contained type of question. And so this discussion we've led up to is that sensorality with an S is the inverse of sensorality with a C. And so what can we say about our sets? Sensorality with an S is definitely more comprehensive, right? The mass that is sentient to make choices, to filter things, right? This notebook is made of mass, I am made of mass, I can choose to move. This thing cannot choose to move. And so sensorality with an S, right, pairs to sensation, sexuality, sensuality. All of these words that start with S, and the base word being sense. And we have words that are associated to physical processes that cannot be reduced. Words are irreducible, and words have meaning. That's why you can follow along with what I'm saying right now. And so we're trying to show, to stabilize sensorality, we're trying to show this internal consistency of the language itself. And so we can take the word, right, literally verse, right? Universe is everything. And so just the word prefix, universe. So if you have the word verse, right, you have V-E-R-S-E. Label each element, right? V is in element slot 1. V is in element slot 1. E is in element slot 2. V3, S4, and E5, the other E. And so, in trying to directly pair this function of what we're doing, clearly the word verse and the word serve, you're switching the S and the V, right? And I say that's iteration. And so iteration is inversion. It's like two of the same thing. But again, if you inversion, right, that's why you have universe as the base, and you have inversion, you have serve. And so it's kind of a nuance. Again, we're at a point where it's just these properties are directly demonstrable. And so that is iteration, is inversion, right? It's literally inverse is serve. So you just have to switch those two elements. And so we're just kind of exploring that, but we're trying to show this internal consistency where we'll generate this completeness of language, and then we'll have this leftover form, which will be our next axiom. And so some theorems, change is chronological, and that's where we're trying to figure out these universal progressions. If you have one thing, the right word is differentiation. How does differentiation occur? And it has to invert on itself That inversion causes difference, and that difference stabilizes. And so what is the most fundamental inversion of mass? Right? The proton and the electron. They're inverses of one another physically. Then you might be saying, well, Brad, the proton's a lot larger, like we discussed in the previous episodes. But wait, right? The opposite of the electron is the positron. So now, if you're new to physics class, I'm going to introduce you to something called AIDS. I mean, antimatter. And so, right, we have the super collider where we just smash things together, right? Which I feel bad for all the physicists' wives out there, right? Lovemaking is not about smashing, jackhammering as fast as you can go. And so the universe is the same way, where again, it's smooth, right? It's more intricate, it's nuanced, you're not just smashing things together. But in fundamental physics, right, if you smash things together, you can get a particle the same size as the electron, but just the opposite charge. And it's called the positron. And so each matter particle has an antimatter particle. But then that raises the question, what is the proton to the electron? In the same way, infinity, or the maximum speed of movement, the speed of light, is bigger than its inverse. It's like maximally bigger. And so inversion establishes minimum and maximum. Right? The fastest something can go, the speed of light. The slowest something can go, 1 over the speed of light. The energy, and the total energy, right, it's related to E equals mc squared, so you can get some calculation with that. But energy and entropy are the inverses, right? Now at the beginning of our phase change, we have extremely high entropy, and then every action, every movement creates entropy. So we go from really stabilized, really low entropy to higher entropy from things moving, and that movement is contained within velocity, and that velocity is regulated the maximum rhythm maximizing velocity and vibration the minimum of velocity. And so we've bounded kind of everything with this inversion. And so and then linguistically, like iteration is inversion. You kind of think flipping, at least I do. So again, we're not the final, again, self-contained thing. I mean, it would literally just be a single statement. But regardless, that's what we're doing functionally with the letters, is inverting. Sensorality is the inverse of sensorality. And sensorality with the S is like the maximum, I think. I want to say it's more comprehensive. There's less mass that is sentient, but it's certainly more comprehensive. Or it might be the other way around. Doesn't really matter. They're inverses. Sensorality with a C, filtration from inanimate objects, and sensorality with an S, choice, the ability to censor, to filter things with choice, is sensorality with the S. And so that's, all of our pieces are right there, and we just have to show this and progress. Back to the theorems. Inversion changes, opposition is different. Chirality is inversional. Chirality is incongruence, right? Chirality, again, we derive that, again, the concept of mirroring somebody is mimicry, right? It's a lot, it predates the actual physical object of you looking in the mirror. But you'll hear chirality, and they'll say you look in the mirror, your left arm looks like your right arm. What does a mirror do, right? It reflects. So then inversion, inflection, reflection. What is this relationship showing this progression? Syllable by syllable, our base isn't changing, but our prefix is changing the logical presentation. But right, if some chirality, to me, the most operative word is asymmetry or not symmetry. And so how that, whether it's a flip, rotation, translation, however you're modifying some isotope, always chemistry is always present in my mind when I think chirality, or again, really helix, right? When you tighten something and you twist a rope, that tightening is like you're like minimizing chirality. I mean, like the double helix structure is because of chirality. But chirality is incongruence, right? If something is symmetric, it maps, it's congruent. You can put one stick on top of the other. But if you can't do that, the mirror image doesn't line up, it is incongruent. And so chirality is incongruence. A translation is horizontal, right? All of our things, because we have these limits, and then things act like point particles to other things. Everything is in orbital, everything is in circular motion. And so that's why we went through the polar coordinates, but translation is horizontal, right? If you take one thing and just kind of push it over here, whenever you say the word translational motion, you're thinking horizontal motion. I don't know, felt important to point it out. Priority slates. Translate slate. Is priority chronological? Nope. Priority is weighted choice or weighted order. So I guess it could be chronological. It doesn't have to be. Posing questions, trying to get your intuition. At this point, again, pretty much this whole time, but rederiving everything. Like even the stuff that I've written down, and I just referenced some theorems too. After I rederive the big concept being that the electron is the inverse of the proton. And so, and clearly the size difference again, but that's the same thing. It's like the energy and entropy is like where are we at with total entropy versus total energy? I don't know that one, but again, overall. But locally, I would say again, is there more energy or entropy? It's like I don't know where we're at in the evolution of the universe, but they're definitely inverses. But point being is that's the big major result is the proton and the electron are inverses. In the same way, whether energy or entropy is the bigger set, one of them is bigger, right? There's something that's bigger, right? Infinity, the speed of light is faster than the slowest speed you can go, and so, right, that accounts for the proton being bigger than the electron. They're inverses somehow. And that's why they both have spin, it's stabilized charge. And so, but the electron does have internal structure. That is definitely still a thing. That's definitely a thing. And the point particle nature of it is just, again, these relative size limits. But the electron is smaller, that is tighter, because again, it's physical orbiting that you just can't break or probe. Because they'll say that I think they say like the electron cannot degrade at all. And so it's just like it's the smallest, it's the tightest bounding thing. And we know it's orbiting because it has spin. And so the electron and the proton are inverses, and obviously that's that's everything. I mean, that's proof of physical inversion of everything. And so am I made of protons and electron in a stabilized dynamic? Yep, definitely, that's definitely occurring. Is this notebook a stabilized dynamic of protons and electrons? Yep. Can this thing move independent of me? Yep. Doing pretty good on our physics so far. But again, the electron and proton are inverses, and antimatter is opposition. It's physical opposition. And so that's a huge science fact. Etymology is chronological. And so whenever we ask a question that we can't really answer, it's not the right question. What's the difference between opposition and inversion? I think you have inversion to create opposition. I think I had the chronology wrong. And etymology is chronological. That's another one of these sections where it's like, what is the first language? Something was first. It doesn't really matter like logically, but it, historically would be interesting. But can you even know? I don't think so. There's just bounds different places. And so etymology is chronological. Why is efficiency CN? It's like Spanish something. Again, it's just structures of language preserve if they are more specific and encapsulate an experience or a physical process more specifically. Regardless of what language it's articulated in, it's going to stay around longer because it's efficient. It's describing something, people hear it and it makes sense to them, and they'll use it. But physics is physi. And so both effervescence is a physical process, and literally it's just a modification of the syllables. We did that last time. It's another huge one. But fuzzy, right? Resolution produces definition. The opposite of definition is fuzziness, right? Sensorality is fuzzy. Fuzz, buzz, right? Vibration buzzes. The resolution is fuzzy, right? They're inverses. So we're demonstrating this completeness of inversion. And so we do have this, again, stabilized opposition, but I just don't think inversion and opposition, what's the difference, is the right question. It's some sort of chronological ordered process where you have one thing, that thing, best we can say, inverts, that creates opposition, that opposition stabilizes, and that's our fundamental stability of two physically, right? The proton and the electron. Such a massive result. But honestly, look at it, like just this whole series, especially the past like 7 months, has just been. But again, the first 69 or nice 68-ish were after speciality had just been axiomatized. So there was like no other data, and then the years in between is just churning, right? Consolidating. We're in the stock market. We're just going sideways for a while, and we have a strong move upward to a new axiom. But the data has to like generate, man. But sensorality is fuzzy, fuzzy is hazy. Resolution is clarity. Clarity is clear. Senality clears. Clarity is glassy. Clarity, charity. Again, before I reference, again, for whatever reason, the feel of the word glass feels old, man. It just feels like there's something to that word, glassy and classy. It's just like something about those words. Maybe it's the ass, but just the intuition. And again, I'll do another more of like socioeconomic big. There, I have a lot more insight. You guys just don't know what you're talking about, man. Right? There was at least two. That's the fundamental difference, right? The question you're asking there is like, how many differentiations could exist? And so what you guys presented in the age of disclosures, like there was two. It's like you guys are not in the right ballpark. Well, it's true, but like you're just seeing this fundamental stability of two is basically this how many unique differentiations actually exist is like two. So that's what you see there. But you guys are all over the place. But anyway, right, it leads us into charity is philanthropic, right? What's the base of philanthropic? Anthropic. Again, not the company, which I Googled the word because I've heard that, right? Anthropology. I'm like, it's one of those ologies where it's like nothing unique. And I looked it up. It's like the study of human science, which is just like science. Part of science is, sentience, and humans are part of sentience. But again, like when do you say, what differentiation is being made to saying I'm a human or I'm a person? Or more importantly, who's telling the story, for how long? And what, when you use those words naturally, we'll get into that. But sensorality is anthropicality, right? Sensorality is anthropic. The base of philanthropic is anthropic. So that's another word that's been in the world. It's literally a company, but it's poignant to point out that the base of philanthropic is anthropic, right? Giving, right? Studying humans, and then we have philanthropy as like giving to other people. Then I have, is opposition different than inversion? We just talked about that. But what is inversion to conversion, right? Opposition converts, or difference, or separation. The word separation is poignant here, something. Inversion is self-prolapsing butthole. Nice. I'm sure you guys love that image. And then opposition is separate, right? So like separate, discrete. I'm not the opposite of my notebook, but again, literally sight, oppo, sight. Distance maybe, but right in mathematics you have -1, +1, -2, +2, and then everyone clearly says in physics class the plus or minus is just direction. And so, yeah. But what is inversion to conversion? Conversion is different, right? Conversion produces difference. Just, again, posing the question to get your intuition in the right place. In mind, like I said, I'm deriving this stuff for real. It's not a joke. What is conversion to opposition? Converting translates, right? Translation is conversion. If you're speaking in French and you translate it to German, you've translated, you've converted the words, the letters, the sounds. Translating changes, translation is horizontal. And I think we set that up. Yes, I derive the same. So that's the thing. Another thing is you see me sit down every single day and derive theorems, but you do run across the same ones because there's only so much. And we're at the end of this, again, like 7-year period of like, that's why again, like I told you, there's gonna be like 14 proofs, and we've hit like 5 now of like just like massive results. And now we have formally proven that the electron is the inverse, but again, we still have to consider chronology. What stabilized first? Because that's the thing, is this 3 dimensions. It was really a fundamental stability of 2, and then it's like open. And so, again, that's what we're showing with speciality. Really, sensorality with an S contains the entirety of speciality, but sensorality with an S and C, and then speciality is our, thing that exists. Antonym. What's the opposite of an antonym? Right, a synonym, but right? We started with something and we opposed that, and then a synonym is something that's similar. It's not the same thing, right? It would be an identity. And so it's just, that's the uniqueness, right? This fundamental uniqueness. And so we're deriving that logically. But massive result that physical opposition is these antimatter particles you guys have discovered by just smashing shit together real fast. And the electron and the proton are inversions. Which one's an inverse of the other? Which one came first? I don't think it makes any sense. But I guess we'll think about that again and see if anything comes up. But some poignant resolutions to what we've been talking about. Again, I just think the wrong question to ask is, what's the difference of inversion and opposition when it's just some sort of chronological difference of differentiating? And so that is what I have for you today. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.